Story 1. We were very poor. My father believed that being poor was no excuse for being dirty. Our house was old and looked unappealing, but inside it was clean. When we could, we bought paint to whitewash it and make it look clean. Story 2. I was never close with my father. He left when I was around 5 years old, so I don't have many memories with him. However, I may still be able to contribute to this. When I was around 16, I was dating a girl in the next state. I met her while on vacation, and we managed to see each other for a weekend every month for a while. I always had problems at home, with my single mother unable to hold down a job and struggling with alcoholism. My girlfriend suggested that I come and stay with her and her parents for a while, to get a fresh start, find a job, and live in a stable home while I finished high school. Her parents were supportive and had suggested it, even though I had only met them a few times before. I agreed and moved into their basement suite, as the parents didn't want us sleeping together. Her parents helped me create a resume, assisted me in enrolling in school, drove me around to look for part-time jobs, and treated me like I was one of their own. About 6 months into my stay, my girlfriend and her mother were out shopping while I was at home with her father, working on one of his cars. I asked him why he was helping me. I expressed my gratitude but was also confused about why he would do so much for me, considering we had only met a few times. He told me he came from a family like mine, broken and with few opportunities. He wished someone had pointed him in the right direction. He shared that he had made some poor choices as a teenager, which included jail time. I had a heartfelt conversation with him about these things, expressing my gratitude and my uncertainty about how to repay him. He told me that as long as I paid it forward, I didn't need to thank him. That day, I began to understand what paying it forward meant. He opened my eyes to the fact that sometimes we must trust people, offer opportunities whether they are deserved or not, and hope they do the right thing with those chances. Since then, I have improved my life and have tried to give others similar opportunities, contributed to charities, helped people find jobs, and offered everyone the benefit of the doubt. He is not my father, and this story may seem insignificant compared to others, but to me, this was the best fatherly advice anyone could have given me at the time. That man definitely shaped my life for the better with everything he has said and done for me, whether he realizes it or not. Story 3. My parents had me fairly young. My dad likes to say that college, marriage, and children are all good things, but not necessarily all at the same time. Story 4. Ask your elderly relatives how they are doing and if they need anything. They will most likely just say no, and you won't need to do anything, but it will make their day. He mentioned this after doing the same for a stranger who happened to be passing by. He also said that being foolish is easy and free. That's why everyone is doing it. Story 5. Always wear a hat. His reasoning was that when the police ask if anyone can describe the suspects, people will say, "Yes, the one with ginger hair." Story 6. Life is hard. Until you realize it is hard, and then it is easy. I believe he meant that there is a lot that is out of your control, and not to worry about those things. Focus on what you can control or change, and life becomes much easier. Story 7. He pointed out that relentless hard work can outshine talent if the latter is not backed by effort. Story 8. Maybe not the most impactful, but he once said, "It's one thing to be poor, but it's a whole other thing to be dirty." Story 9. You should always use the restroom before getting in the car, because you never know when you will have the next opportunity. Story 10. I had an ex cheat on me, and I was devastated. It wasn't just the loss of the relationship. It was the realization that I had been completely taken in by him. He told me he was seeing another woman and fully expected me to wait while he decided which of us he wanted to be with. I was heartbroken and embarrassed, but I left. My father said, "Do not blame the audience for being taken in by the actor's performance. It is the job of an actor to convince you." That really helped me stop blaming myself and start holding the actual cheating person accountable. Story 11. He often compared life to a marathon rather than a sprint, a metaphor that has influenced the way I pace my journey. Story 12. Every taxi driver knows how to coach the national football team and run a country. Story 13. He told me, "There are two things in life you can't take back: bullets from a gun and words from your mouth." has always stuck with me. Story 14. My father showed me what being weak, dishonest, lazy, and addicted looks like, so I vowed never to become anything like him. Having moved out and experienced homelessness as a teenager due to that toxic environment, I worked hard for all the successes I have today and am thankful for that life lesson. Story 15. He didn't say it but showed it. If you promise not to get mad when your child tells you the truth and follow through with that, your child will tell you the truth. Punishments still happen, but your child being able to count on you is more important. Remind them you love them when you're mad or they mess up. I didn't realize how wonderful all of this was until I recognized how uncommon it is. Story 16. If you are sacrificing quality to finish faster, you are making a mistake. If you have time to redo something due to an error, then you have time to do it correctly the first time. This may not be the exact wording, but the meaning remains unchanged. Story 17. Your words have power. I often doubt myself and speak negatively, but if you listen to that voice, you become that voice. Story 18. My father told me that our name has been passed down with honor for countless generations. It is now mine. Always keep your word, live honorably, and pass it along in a better situation than I received it. I have tried very hard to live up to those words. Story 19. Life is full of choices. Sometimes those choices are poor and dictate the next set of decisions. Additionally, avoid making unwise decisions. If you feel that you might look back and think, that was unwise, then refrain from taking that action. Story 20. I love you, and I will always be there for you, but let me tell you one thing. You will need to handle child support on your own. Story 21. I was working in consulting and struggling with burnout, unrealistic deadlines, pressure to excel, and long hours. This was during the COVID lockdowns, and I was averaging around 16 hours of work a day, with maybe 20 to 30 minutes to eat or use the restroom. He advised me not to run myself into the ground over a job and to seek something new, which was pretty obvious. Then he said, "You have a wife. Take care of her. Someday you'll have kids. Take care of them. Everyone else can take care of themselves." That advice helped me prioritize what was important and allowed me to take my job less seriously while improving my professional boundaries. Story 22. How not to be a man or a father. At every crossroads in my life, I have asked myself, what would my dad do? And every single time, I choose to do the opposite. Story 23. My dad once told me that when embarking on a new endeavor, such as a new job, you don't hope for it to be successful. You decide that it will be successful. I understand that not all things can be achieved that way, but I firmly believe that the human mind is the most underutilized tool on earth. Adopting such a mindset can help make seemingly insurmountable challenges manageable. For me, it's the ultimate mental strategy. That mindset has helped me achieve important goals in my life at times when it was essential to do so. Story 24. The night before my first day of high school, my dad pulled me aside and told me to do whatever I wanted. But whatever I did, I shouldn't get pregnant. I'm turning 40 this year and still haven't gotten pregnant. Story 25. Two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. While I was learning to drive, he said that was the most important thing to understand while driving. Story 26. My dad taught me how to see through horrific situations to find the silver lining. For example, we drove down to Homestead, Florida, from Tampa to help with the cleanup and aftermath of Hurricane Andrew. I was so shocked by the devastation. I was 15 and couldn't stop crying, sobbing uncontrollably. With tears in his eyes, my dad hugged me and acknowledged how awful and horrific it was. Then he pointed out the caravan we traveled with, the trucks distributing water and meals ready to eat to people who lost everything, and the sun shining. He said, "See, there's the good. There are the helpers. Always look for the helpers and do what you can to help." That was 33 years ago, and I still try to find that little glimmer of good in every situation. I never turn a blind eye to helping someone when I can. This mindset even helped me choose a good husband, the man who supported me when I needed it most, just like my dad would have done during my dad's funeral. After 28 years, this man still does what he can to help me and others. Story 27. My dad never raised his voice. He knew he was dying at an early age after receiving infected treatment for hemophilia. He was a patient and empathetic soul, even after facing such a catastrophic blow. He worked hard for his family and was never bitter. He died at 57, and at his funeral, there wasn't a seat left in the church. Over 100 people gathered outside to pay their respects. He always used to say shrouds have no pockets. Story 28. Never do something unless you fully understand why. If you don't know why, ask. This principle has always guided me to be a critical thinker, and I am eternally grateful for that. Story 29. You will never be judged or treated fairly because of your skin. You will have to work twice as hard to even be considered equal. Sadly, he was wrong. I worked 3 times as hard and still wasn't considered equal, and I am now left with nothing in part because of racism and sexism. Story 30. Whatever you do for work, whether it's washing dishes, serving drinks, fixing cars, or running a business, it doesn't matter. Just be the best at it. Although I don't recall the exact words, the message has had a significant impact on my working life. Story 31. I was 14. Marijuana is fine. You'll have plenty of it when you're old enough. Right now, it will take away all your motivation. I tried cocaine and loved it, so I never touched it again. Story 32. It's good to want. It's bad to need. As I was leaving for college, I thought, to stay out of 90% of trouble in this world, all you need to do is keep your pecker in your pants. Story 33. Everyone is a difficult person, said the classic Australian father, but he wasn't wrong. He definitely prepared me for the real world before I even entered it. Story 34. You cannot always get what you want. However, if you try sometimes, you might find that you get what you need. Story 35. He said, when you are at work, you work. It is not a place to relax and have fun because if work were fun, we wouldn't be paid to do it. It allowed me to focus on my tasks and enjoy my time when I was not working. Story 36. The only good piece of advice he gave me is that there are certain mistakes and choices you make that no amount of apology or expression of regret can fix. You should always own up to it when you make a mistake. Ironically, it's a piece of advice I think he forgot. Story 37. He once told me to pick my battles. I have lived by that ever since and always remember it when I must decide whether it is worth it to fight back or not. Story 38. Right before I left for basic training, he said, keep that sense of humor. It's critical. I am still guided by that today. I always try to find humor in everything. Divorce, friends dying, world events, and more. If I couldn't laugh at things, I would be devastated most of the time. I never would have made it through my time on active duty. Post-traumatic stress disorder is challenging, but at least I can laugh about it. Story 39. The first few days with a new team, you do not say much. This means that when you start a new job, you should take the time to understand the culture and your colleagues. Story 40. One day you will meet a woman that you will fall madly in love with. Whatever you do, do not tell your wife. Story 41. Don't fight. Run. If you haven't made eye contact with the police, you can still run. He also taught me when to call a professional and when to handle it yourself. Story 42. Always allow people a way to save face. This has served me well. When you embarrass people or make them feel small, they become defensive, dig in their heels, and may argue with you, retaliate, or simply not like you very much. However, if you provide them an opportunity to change their thinking without confrontation or embarrassment, they are more likely to adjust their perspective. Additionally, they will think more positively of you and be more receptive to your future communication. Story 43. If you see something that needs to be done or someone is in trouble, you need to realize that no one is coming to help. It's up to you. It's a legacy of being a latchkey kid from the 1970s and 1980s. It made me develop many practical skills and an ability to come up with a plan and take action, even if it's the wrong approach. But the emotional wear and tear made it difficult for me to accept advice or see anyone else's plan as better than my own. I hesitate less and will at least attempt something, but I can come off as insensitive in tense or emergency situations. Take it with a grain of salt, like most wisdom, and apply it mindfully. I don't believe it's a one-size-fits-all approach, but it will at least allow you to operate when needed. Story 44. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind. When Doctor Who repeated that phrase, it became even more powerful. I have it tattooed in Gallifreyan on my forearm. You cannot always be nice to people who do not treat you right, but you can always be kind to everyone. Story 45. Make your boss's job easier, and you will succeed. I have worked at my last 5 jobs, and I get promoted once every 1 to 2 years. Story 46. My dad always told me that if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. He encouraged me to seek out challenges and never get too comfortable. Story 47. So many gems. People come in every color. Everyone gets their time in difficult situations. Always have at least $2 in your pocket so you can at least buy a soda. Sometimes you don't know whether to act or feel overwhelmed. I will have to discuss with my siblings, but that's just a few thoughts. Story 48. I lost my dad last year, but his words still echo in my head. Being early is on time, being on time is late, and being late is unacceptable. This principle has shaped my entire professional life, and honestly, people notice that kind of reliability. Story 49. When I was looking to buy a different car, my dad would always say, "Sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't." He also said, "Never buy a Ford." Story 50. Nothing will bury a man quicker than his pride. Stay humble, own your mistakes, and recognize that you are not perfect and that you will make errors. But atone for those mistakes and make them right when you can. Do not remain in a difficult situation out of fear of giving up. Do not pay attention to what most people think of you. There are only a select few whose opinions matter. Story 51. When I was a little girl, the first time I was allowed to use watercolors, my father showed me how to wash and maintain the brushes. He emphasized the importance of taking proper care of them and wouldn't let me use the paints until I had learned this. I am now a professional artist, a painter, in fact. I have some brushes that I have used for over 30 years, probably because I know how to take good care of them. Story 52. Be carefree in your 20s, travel the world, have fun, and look to settle down when you are a little older. He had seen many of his friends get married at 23 or 24 and divorced at 27 or 28, so he decided to stay single and enjoy life until he was over 30. Then he met and married my mother at 33. I took his advice, moved abroad, came back, met my wife in 2002, married in 2005 at 32, and we are still going strong. Story 53. Do not be like him. To be fair, he never told me that. I figured it out on my own like everything else. Story 54. Don't be like me. I skipped school, and my mother threatened me all afternoon about what my dad was going to do to me when he got home. I was terrified. We were made to stand in front of him and tell him what we did so he could administer punishment. This was usually in the form of physical discipline. On one occasion, he simply looked at his leathery, calloused hands and said, "This is what you get when you don't go to school." He left school around 11, worked low-paying jobs, and never learned to read or write very well. He worked framing houses in freezing weather, drinking himself to sleep every night. Go to school. Please, don't be like me. I did. I'm not. Story 55. I was in an all-girls dorm in college. It was strict, so if you had a boyfriend, he had to wait at the entrance for you. Only your father could go inside. One girl, let's call her Jane, was 19 years old and had a 38-year-old boyfriend. Since most of us had never had a relationship, we kind of envied her and her mature boyfriend. Jane kept bragging about how she could attract a man, not a boy. This man was unemployed, had not finished high school, and was still living with his parents. One Friday, at the beginning of a long weekend, my father came to the dorm to take me home. At the front door, Jane and her boyfriend were making out. We got into the car, and I could see that my father was quite worried. "Isn't that your classmate, Jane?" "Yes, Dad." "And who is that man?" I told him all about the boyfriend, and my father was silent for several minutes. Then he said one of the most important pieces of advice ever. "He is not with her because she is mature for her age. That guy is a loser, an almost 40-year-old who is not in education, employment, or training, and number 30-year-old woman would ever date him. He dates teenagers because they are gullible, not mature. Story 56. He would tell me that the only thing you truly own in this world is your name. Protect it, have integrity, and don't be known for bad qualities like laziness or dishonesty. He was a decorated naval officer, so he had high standards for how a man should conduct himself. Story 57. Eventually, you learn to forgive the world for not being perfect. You also learn to forgive yourself for ever thinking it could be. Story 58. Not a wisdom per se, but he told me that his father, my grandfather, had a dream for a generation of people in humanity's future who wouldn't have to see or hear about war in their entire lives. This absence of war, not just hiding it from them, would be ideal, even if only for a single generation. That has been my guiding principle since then. I know I may not see it, but I can do my best to bring it to fruition for my great-great-great-grandchildren. Story 59. Pay yourself first. Every time you receive a raise, set aside the majority of that increase in savings. That advice has served me well throughout my life. Story 60. You have nothing that someone else didn't help you achieve. Set aside all that hard work and consider everyone else who was involved. You had access to education, housing, food, and security because of others. You got your first job because your friend knew the owner. You got your first car because your uncle was willing to take a loss selling it to family. All of that and more formed the foundation of your current success, and you had nothing to do with any of it. So, keep your ego in check and find ways to help someone else with their foundation. He impressed this admonishment upon me when I was an arrogant 22-year-old boasting about how much better I was at life than my older brother. I can still see the disappointment on his face, and now I struggle to even compete in video games. Story 61. Better to fart and bear the shame than hold it in and bear the pain. He adhered to this principle until his dying day. He expressed it in museums, movie theaters, and everywhere else. Story 62. Whenever I or one of my brothers messed something up and said, "I didn't mean to," he would respond, "Well, you meant not to." As kids, we all found this quite annoying. However, we eventually recognized it as a valuable life lesson about the importance of awareness and intent. Story 63. When my first girlfriend and I broke up, I was in so much pain. He told me she didn't belong to me. I know he meant that no one should belong to anyone. Took time to figure it out, but it has stayed with me all my life. Story 64. Work hard. Do your best. No one can ask for more. Then there were the questions that were quite annoying at the time. Does that go there? Meaning my coat didn't get thrown over the kitchen chair. Did you turn off the light in your room? Where are you going? Meaning I was speeding. All good principles to live by. Story 65. My dad is a psychologist with a long career working with various kinds of people. He once told me, everyone has their struggles, and they all come by it honestly. This means that everyone has some form of trauma, anxiety, or depression, and if you dig deep enough into their past, you will find a legitimate reason for their behavior. It helped me feel more empathy toward people who may not always be kind. Story 66. I never met my father and don't even know his name. The wisdom I gained from him is simply to be present for your children. Story 67. The only thing my father did was provide me with negative examples, such as how not to raise children, be a husband, manage money, and prioritize one's career to the point of becoming unemployable. Just remember this. The entire purpose of your life might be to serve as a warning to others. Story 68. If you borrow something, always return it in as good or better shape than you received it. Give it back when the job is done. Don't make them ask for it. If a neighbor lets you borrow their lawnmower, return it with a full tank of gas. If you borrow a tool and break it, buy them a replacement. I borrowed a generator while our power was out for over a week, and I changed the oil and replaced the belt before returning it. Story 69. Wish in one hand and something undesirable in the other. See which one fills up first. If a friend owes you money, you can either have a friend or get your money back, but not both. You can choose your friends, and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. Story 70. Not sure if this is the most impactful, but I remember it well. Spend money on quality items that connect you to the ground, mainly shoes, car tires, and a bed. Perhaps the most impactful statement is this: I love you, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Excuse me, I need to call my dad now. Story 71. Being peaceful is a virtue. Being harmless is important. Start with the most affordable solution and work up from there. The world is full of difficult people, and many of them are in positions of power. Son, you can always wash your hands. Story 72. It was not anything I recall him saying. He was a very quiet person. However, I learned from his example to treat people fairly and equally, that cruelty solves nothing, and to offer help to those in need. Story 73. Show me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are. They only share how much they win from gambling. They do not mention how much they bet and lose. Story 74. If a problem can be solved by money, it is not a problem but an expense. Never pay interest. Keep your word. Story 75. If anyone attacks me, I become reactive, getting angry and blinded by rage. I don't know if they will kill me. I can figure that out later. Story 76. My father worked at General Motors for 43 years. I was a student there for a couple of years in college, and I'll never forget what he told me the first night we drove in together. They can tell you where to work, when to work, and how to work. They can tell you what will happen if you don't work. They can't tell you to like the work. But if you expect to eat tomorrow, get to work. Story 77. My dad told me about his theory of concentric circles. He said to imagine your life, your interactions, and your relationships as a series of concentric circles. As a baby, your innermost circle is your parents. You need them to survive and don't know much about the world. As you grow into a young person, your parents move to an outer circle, and your friends become the innermost circle. This transition can be challenging and explains why many teenagers have issues with their parents and vice versa. Then, maybe you meet a partner, and your partner becomes your innermost circle while the friend circle moves outward, possibly beyond the parent circle. In a successful partnership, your partner should always remain your first concentric circle. Even if you have children, it may seem like they have taken the innermost position due to their high maintenance and your immeasurable love for them. However, your partner should always remain in the innermost circle to avoid conflicts and to ensure that children do not manipulate this dynamic. This is how he saw successful relationships working. He also emphasized that in the middle is you, the only person who will be with you your entire life, from your first breath to your last, so you need to always be true to yourself. I'm not as eloquent as my dad, but it was enlightening to hear him talk about it. Of course, we often referred to these discussions as martini talks, so take it for what it's worth. Story 78. The first time a man gets violent or puts his hands on you in anger is the last time he touches you, ever. The relationship is over in that moment, no second chances. It's a test, and failing it means you die. He drilled that message into me, that no love is worth it, and as much as he thought I was the best thing ever, nothing about me was so special that it would fix a broken man. It was embedded in my bones, and the one time a man raised his hand to me, all feeling I had for him drained away, and it was over. I didn't hesitate to end it, didn't second-guess myself, and didn't give him an opportunity to explain or apologize. You are simply gone from my life. Tomorrow my dad would have been 77, and he's still keeping me safe. Story 79. Change your oil, or change your engine. If someone speaks with a southern accent, I immediately take 10 points off their IQ. Some politicians will never help the poor and will only ever help the wealthy. A gun is just another tool. You have to push yourself. If you don't know how to swim in Michigan, you can't even tie a pork chop around your neck to get the dog to play with you. A commercial driver's license is always a job in your pocket. The only reason many people are alive is because it is illegal to kill them. Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's boyfriend. If someone has a Confederate flag, you know they are lacking in judgment. Don't quit your job before you have another one lined up. Speak, old toothless one. Teddy Roosevelt is my hero. Why would you want to take your own life? Are you afraid of living? It doesn't matter where you are. You'll always encounter the same kinds of people. Skin color doesn't matter. Nobody has proven Albert Einstein wrong yet. Better fuel will reduce maintenance. Ty Cobb was not a nice person. Climate change is real. Don't ever say disrespectful things to me again. I haven't seen sunlight for 30 years. It's great. Transitional lenses in his glasses. I love Velcro shoes. Gout is terrible. I want to oppose certain politicians. Oil companies could still make a lot of money if they drilled now, but they just want to maximize profits, so they will wait. I know many individuals who have lost fingers working on drilling rigs. All-wheel drive cars are not essential. They involve more parts that can break down. Don't be sympathetic to Russia. Jesus never killed anyone. Muhammad led armies. Cannabis always made me unmotivated. That drink tastes like dinner. Rest in peace, Dad. Story 80. The idea of doing harm to someone has never crossed his mind. That is the greatest wisdom for me. Story 81. If you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all doubt you, but make allowance for their doubt. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master. If you can think and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings and not lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all count with you but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Kipling. He read poetry to me frequently. Story 82. If you remarry a woman with children, you can completely disregard your biological son and never reach out to him again. That is what he taught me. Story 83. Story 1. I really disliked school. One day in junior high, I skipped school. My father came home for lunch that day, and instead of yelling at me, as usual, he asked if I wanted to go to a truck stop. We went, had lunch, and he asked me if I liked doing physical labor like digging holes and moving cement bags. I told him I hated that work. When you grow up, you either work with your head or you work with your back. Unless you get serious about being smart now, you will own a lot of work boots. That was it. No deep conversations about school or applying myself. He was simply telling me I had a choice. I never took school seriously, but I did plan a future that kept me out of construction sites. No disrespect to manual laborers. You all are amazing. Whether it's restaurant work, painting, or other tough jobs, you do things every day that would break me both physically and mentally. Story 84. My dad told me he was often wrong and encouraged me to criticize him and any opinion he held. He believed it was important for me to understand that parents are not always right. He felt strongly that respect should be earned rather than assumed. He actually enjoys when I contradict him, seeing it as a success in his role as a parent. He grew up in a very abusive household. Story 85. Sometimes you have to make a choice that isn't best for you but is better for everyone. Don't be afraid to make that choice. It will work out. Story 86. Story 2. My dad died when I was 25. We didn't exactly get along for most of our life together. My mom always accused us of being too similar, which caused friction. However, before he passed away, we had started to build something. On the morning of my first office job, I accidentally woke my mother while getting ready for work. My dad rolled over, put his arm around her, and said he hoped I would get fired. My mom told him that was rude and asked why. He replied that he didn't want work to own me like it owned him. She shared this story with me when I got home from work that day. I didn't need to remind her that Dad had died a few months earlier. I also had no doubt she had that conversation. It's exactly what I would have told my son. Story 87. I have two. If you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over? You have not converted a person because you have silenced them. Story 88. Whatever you do for a career, make sure it is something you enjoy. I could pay you $400,000 a year to perform a tedious job. You would have plenty of money but be miserable all the time. Story 89. At work, focus on your tasks and complete your responsibilities. In finance, diversify your investments into 4 different categories. Story 90. He showed up when I was 12, took us out to dinner, and gave me $20 for snowboard wax. He set me up for life. Story 91. No matter what I mastered, my father always praised me, but he would ultimately tell me that I could do better. Story 92. I did the opposite of what my parents would do. As a result, I am happy and successful. No one dislikes me. I do not take advantage of others. Actions instead of words. Story 93. Death is not the end. It is a reminder. Our time on earth is not infinite. Live in this moment. It is all we have. Story 94. Things can go wrong in an instant. It is a reminder to be cautious and aware of changes in circumstances. Story 95. My dad has always said to work hard and play hard. He truly lives by that philosophy, and I strive to do the same. Story 96. My father was a lowlife, and I am grateful that I am nothing like him. I am glad he is gone. If you had a decent dad, consider yourself lucky. Story 97. You are just like your mother. He meant it as an insult. But I am just like my mom. I am strong, resilient, and loving, qualities he never possessed. Thank God I am nothing like him. Story 98. When I was a child, my father often said, treat others as you would like to be treated. This principle forms the foundation of my moral beliefs as an adult. Story 99. I was scared once. Do it right the first time or you will spend more time doing it the right way again. Story 100. My father's financial problems, including his inability to save money and his gambling addiction, have inspired me to become highly skilled at saving money. I am also careful about adopting habits that could become addictive, especially those that could lead to significant financial loss. Story 101. Do your best and leave the rest up to God. This was never about God or spirituality. It was just his way of telling me that a person can only control their effort, but the results of that effort depend on countless factors outside our control. So once you've put in the effort, you need to distance yourself from the results. If it works out, great. If not, then no good comes from beating yourself up about something that was never in your control. Story 102. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. I'm sure he would have said something like that. I haven't seen him since I was 12. But I know he still loves me and can't wait until he gets back from his business trip to meet his grandkids. Story 103. When I was deciding to go to college, he said that knowing business can never hurt you. You can apply it to anything. Story 104. Always be on time for work. Take it seriously because being late and seeming not to care can lead to termination. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.